"Don't stop," the Apache girl whispered. The rancher misunderstood. And that night changed everything. The land stretched wide and quiet under the open sky, a place where silence felt heavy and meaningful at the same time. Long grasses moved with the wind, bending like waves, and the mountains stood far away, calm and patient. This land did not belong to one man alone, even though fences tried to say otherwise. It carried stories older than any fence, older than any house built with cut wood and iron nails. The rancher lived on the edge of this wide land, where settled ground met ancient paths. His name was Elijah Turner, though most people simply called him Turner. He was not a man of many words. His days began before sunrise and ended after the stars appeared, and in between he worked with steady hands and quiet focus. He fixed fences, cared for cattle, repaired tools, and spoke more to animals than to people. Elijah had learned long ago that life could take more than it gave. Years earlier, he had lost his family to illness, one season after another, until the house felt too large and too empty. After that, he stopped going into town unless he had to. He stopped expecting kindness and learned to live without it. The land became his companion, honest and demanding, never pretending to be gentle. Beyond his ranch lay Apache land, where people still lived close to the earth, honoring old ways while struggling against change forced upon them. Tension had existed between settlers and the Apache people for many years. Some days were calm, others uncertain. Elijah did his best to stay neutral. He did not seek trouble, nor did he wish harm on anyone. He believed that peace was found by keeping distance. Among the Apache community lived a young woman named Nailin. She was known for her calm strength and sharp awareness of the world around her. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, people paid attention. Her grandmother had raised her with stories of the land, teaching her that the earth remembered everything. Nailin believed this deeply. She felt connected to every trail, every stream, every shift in the wind. Nailin helped her people in quiet ways. She gathered plants, cared for animals, and assisted elders when needed. She was observant, thoughtful, and practical. While others feared the nearby ranch, she viewed it with caution rather than anger. She believed that not all outsiders were the same, and that understanding began with watching, not judging. One afternoon, as the sun leaned low and the shadows grew long, a horse stumbled into Elijah's land. It was limping badly, breathing hard and clearly exhausted. Elijah noticed it while checking the fence line. He approached slowly, speaking in a calm voice. The horse did not run, which told him everything. It was hurt and had no strength left to flee. Elijah examined the animal carefully. One leg was swollen, likely twisted or strained. The horse wore simple markings that told him it belonged to the Apache people. He hesitated. Returning it would mean crossing into land he avoided. Keeping it could cause trouble. Still, leaving the animal to suffer was not an option. He guided the horse into his barn and tended to it the best he could. He cleaned the leg, wrapped it gently, and gave the animal water. The horse relaxed under his care, trusting him in a way that surprised even Elijah himself. As night approached, he wondered who would come looking for it. Nailin noticed the horse's absence before sunset. She followed its tracks carefully, her steps light but confident. She recognized the trail leading toward the ranch. Her heart tightened, not with fear but with awareness. She knew this land had boundaries, not just of wood and wire, but of history and emotion. Still, she could not abandon the horse. She approached the ranch as the sky darkened, the wind growing cooler. When she reached the edge of the land, she paused. Lights glowed faintly from the barn. She listened. The sounds were calm, no shouting, no raised voices, only the soft movement of an animal. She stepped forward slowly, making her presence known. Elijah heard her before he saw her. His body stiffened, old instincts rising. He stepped outside the barn, keeping his hands visible, his posture steady. Their eyes met for the first time in the fading light. Neither spoke at first. The air between them felt thick, not with danger but with uncertainty. "I found your horse," Elijah finally said, his voice even. "It was hurt," Nayland nodded. "Thank you for helping it." Her voice was calm, without accusation. That surprised him. He stepped aside, allowing her to see the horse. She moved closer, checking the animal with practiced care. She could see that Elijah had done what he could. The wrapping was simple but effective. "You treated it well," she said. Elijah shrugged slightly. "It needed help." That was all. No explanations. No justifications. They stood together in silence, both aware of how unusual the moment was. The land that divided them felt smaller inside the barn, where shared concern outweighed old stories of conflict. The horse would need rest, maybe days. Nayland knew it could not travel safely yet. She also knew night was coming fast and the sky showed signs of a coming storm. Clouds gathered low and heavy, carrying the promise of rain and strong wind. "I should stay nearby," she said carefully. "The storm will be strong." Elijah hesitated. His instinct was to refuse. His home had been empty for too long and he was used to it that way. But the storm had already begun to whisper through the trees and the horse needed watching. "You can stay in the barn," he said at last. "It's dry." Nayland accepted with a nod. There was no smile, no relief shown, only quiet understanding. As the night deepened, rain fell hard against the roof. Thunder rolled across the plains. Inside the barn, lantern light cast long shadows on the walls. Elijah worked on reinforcing a loose beam while Nayland stayed close to the horse, calming it with soft sounds. They did not speak much, but they noticed each other. Elijah saw how carefully she moved, how aware she was of every sound. Nayland saw how focused he was, how his actions showed care even when his face revealed little. This night was already different from any Elijah had known in years, not because of danger, but because of presence. Another human being shared the space, not as a threat, but as someone with purpose. Outside, the storm grew stronger, sealing them into the moment. Neither of them knew that this night, which had begun with a wounded horse and simple choices, would quietly reshape the way they understood the world, and each other. And it all started here on the edge of two worlds, where silence spoke louder than fear. The storm did not arrive gently. It came with force, as if the sky itself had grown tired of holding its weight. Rain struck the roof of the barn in heavy waves, each drop loud and sharp. Wind pushed against the wooden walls, making them creak and groan like old bones. Thunder rolled again and again, deep and steady, as if the land was speaking in a powerful voice. Inside the barn, the lantern flickered. Its warm light fought against the shadows that danced along the walls. The horse shifted uneasily, sensing the storm's strength. Nayland placed her hand on its neck, her movements slow and careful. She spoke softly, not in words meant to be understood by everyone, but in a tone that carried calm. The horse slowly settled, its breathing evening out. Elijah worked nearby, tightening a loose rope and checking the door to make sure it would hold. He had lived through many storms, but this one felt different. Not more dangerous, just heavier, fuller. Perhaps it was because he was not alone. The silence between them was not empty. It was filled with awareness. Every small movement felt louder than it should have. The scrape of Elijah's boot on the dirt floor. The gentle sound of Nayland's breath as she focused on the horse. Neither of them tried to break the quiet. As the rain grew stronger, a sudden crack of thunder made the horse jump. Elijah moved quickly, steadying it from the other side. His hands were firm but gentle. The animal responded to his calm strength. Nayland watched closely. She noticed how he did not rush, how he seemed to understand the animal's fear without force. She felt a quiet respect forming, though she did not name it. In her world, action spoke louder than words. The wind howled through a small opening near the roof. Rain found its way inside, dripping down the wooden beams. Elijah grabbed a cloth and climbed a short ladder to block the gap. As he worked, another loud sound shook the barn and the ladder shifted slightly. He caught himself, steady but strained. "Careful," Nayland said instinctively. Her voice was soft, but it carried concern. Elijah paused, surprised by how much the single word affected him. He nodded once and finished securing the cloth before climbing down. For a moment, they stood closer than before, both focused on the same task. The air felt warmer, heavier. Not with anything improper, but with shared effort and tension from the storm. The horse began to tremble again, its injured leg causing discomfort. Elijah moved to fetch water while Nayland checked the wrapping. She noticed the cloth had loosened slightly. Carefully, she adjusted it, making sure not to hurt the animal. Elijah returned and watched her work. He could see that she knew exactly what she was doing. Her hands were sure, her expression focused. He felt a strange mix of relief and unease. Relief that the horse was in capable hands. Unease because he realized how little he truly knew about the people living so close to him. Another sharp sound echoed outside, louder than before. The barn door rattled, and for a brief moment, darkness swallowed the space as the lantern flickered low. Nayland's breath caught, not in fear, but in reaction to the sudden change. Elijah reached out to steady the lantern, keeping it from going out. His movement was quick and automatic. The light returned, softer now. "It will pass," he said quietly, more to the moment than to her. Nayland nodded, though her eyes stayed on the horse. "Storms always do," she replied. As the minutes stretched on, exhaustion began to settle in. The storm showed no sign of slowing. The rain became steady, relentless. Time felt suspended, as if the outside world no longer existed beyond the walls of the barn. The horse shifted again, clearly uncomfortable. Elijah adjusted his grip, applying gentle pressure to keep it calm. Nayland noticed the animal respond to his steady rhythm. She leaned in slightly, focused on the horse's breathing. "Don't stop," she whispered. Her words were meant for the moment, for the action. She was asking him to keep doing what he was doing, to maintain the calm that was helping the animal settle. In her mind, the meaning was clear and simple, but Elijah heard the words differently. The sound of her voice, quiet and close, reached him in a way he did not expect. For a split second, his thoughts tangled. He became aware of how close they were standing, of the storm surrounding them, of the isolation of the place. His heart beat faster, not with desire but with sudden confusion and fear of misunderstanding. He froze. The horse sensed the change immediately and grew restless again. Nayland looked up, surprised. She saw Elijah step back slightly, his expression tense and distant. He started, then stopped. Silence filled the space again, heavier than before. The rain continued, unaware of the shift inside the barn. Nayland felt her face warm with embarrassment. She realized too late how her words might have sounded. In her culture, context mattered deeply, but she understood that not everyone heard words the same way. "I meant the horse," she said quietly, her voice steady but firm. "Your hands, it helps." Elijah nodded quickly, shame touching his features. "I know," he said, though he had not at first. "I just misunderstood." He stepped forward again, resuming his steady touch on the horse. The animal relaxed once more, as if relieved by the return of calm. Neither spoke after that, but the silence was different now. It carried awareness, reflection, and a shared understanding that something small had almost turned into something larger. The storm continued its long song through the night. The rain softened eventually, though thunder still rolled in the distance. Time moved slowly, measured by the horse's breathing and the flicker of the lantern. Elijah kept his focus on the task, grounding himself in simple actions. Nayland did the same. Each found comfort in responsibility, in caring for something beyond themselves. As the night deepened, the storm began to weaken. The rain slowed to a steady rhythm, no longer harsh. Wind softened, passing through the trees like a tired sigh. The misunderstanding lingered in both their minds, not as a wound but as a lesson. Words mattered. Assumptions mattered more than they realized. By the time the sky began to lighten just slightly at the edges, the horse was resting peacefully. Elijah leaned against a beam, tired but steady. Nayland sat nearby, her posture relaxed, eyes thoughtful. Neither of them knew it yet, but that brief moment, those two whispered words and the pause that followed, had already changed something inside them both. Not in a dramatic way, but quietly, like the land itself shifting beneath unseen roots. The night had tested them, not with danger but with understanding. And though the storm was passing, its echo would remain long after the clouds cleared. Morning did not arrive all at once. It came slowly, quietly, as if the land itself was careful not to disturb what the night had left behind. The storm clouds thinned, pulling away from the sky little by little. Pale light spread across the plains, touching the wet ground and turning every drop of water into a small mirror. Inside the barn, the air felt different. The heaviness of the night had softened, replaced by a gentle stillness. The horse lay calmly, its breathing steady and deep. The worst of the pain had passed, at least for now. That alone felt like a small victory. Elijah had not slept. He sat against one of the wooden beams, arms resting loosely at his sides. His body was tired, but his mind refused to rest. The moment kept replaying in his thoughts, the words, the pause, the misunderstanding. He had lived many years avoiding moments like that, moments where silence became unclear and meaning slipped away. He told himself it was nothing, just tired minds and a long night. Still, it stayed with him. Across the barn, Nayland stirred as the light grew brighter. She rose slowly, careful not to disturb the horse. Her movements were quiet, controlled, as always. She had slept lightly, waking often, her thoughts moving between the present moment and the larger meaning behind it. She did not feel angry. She did not feel afraid. What she felt most was awareness. She understood how easily words could bend when spoken across different lives. She had been taught since childhood to choose her words with care, but even care did not always protect against misunderstanding. For a brief moment their eyes met. No surprise this time. No tension, just recognition. "Elijah," she said softly, speaking his name for the first time. He straightened slightly. "The horse seems better," he replied. His voice was calm, steady, but quieter than usual. She nodded and walked closer, checking the wrapping once more. "You did good work," she said. "It helped through the night." He gave a small nod in return. Compliments were not something he knew how to carry easily. They worked side by side for a while, tending to small tasks without speaking much. The rhythm felt natural, almost practiced, even though it was new. Outside, birds began to call, their sounds gentle and hopeful after the storm. Eventually, Nayland broke the silence. "Last night," she said carefully, "I want to be clear." Elijah tensed slightly, then relaxed. He turned to face her fully, giving her his attention. "I should be the one saying that," he replied. "I misunderstood. That was my fault." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I know why it happened," she said. "Storms make people uneasy. Silence, too." He considered her words. "I've spent a long time alone," he admitted. "Sometimes that makes things harder to understand." She accepted this without judgment. "Being alone teaches some things," she said, "but it hides others." They stood quietly again, not because there was nothing left to say, but because what needed saying had already been shared. There was no blame between them, only honesty. As the sun rose higher, the land outside came alive. Steam lifted from the damp ground. The smell of wet earth filled the air. Elijah opened the barn door wider, letting light flood the space. Nayland stepped outside for a moment, breathing deeply. She looked across the land, noticing how the ranch blended into the wider world beyond it. Fences stood, but they did not change the shape of the earth. She wondered how many people saw boundaries and how many saw connection. Elijah watched her from a distance. He realized how rarely he looked at the land the way she did, not as property but as something shared. That thought unsettled him, but also stirred something new. "I should return to my people soon," Nayland said when she came back inside. But the horse will need rest. It should stay here for now, he nodded. It can stay as long as needed. She hesitated, then added, I will return to check on it. You're welcome to, he replied without hesitation. The ease of his answer surprised them both. As the morning grew warmer, they prepared to part ways. Nayland gathered her things, pausing once more beside the horse. She rested her hand gently on its neck, offering a final calming touch. Before she left, she turned back to Elijah. Last night changed something, she said simply. He thought about that. I think so too, he answered. She did not explain further, and neither did he. Some truths did not need to be shaped into full sentences. Nayland walked away from the ranch at an unhurried pace. She did not look back, not because she was closing a door, but because she trusted the moment to stay where it belonged, in memory, not in doubt. Elijah watched until she disappeared into the distance. Then he returned to the barn, to the familiar work that grounded him. But the work felt different now. The silence felt less heavy. Throughout the day, his thoughts wandered. He found himself replaying their conversation, her calm presence, the way she had spoken without fear or accusation. He realized how rarely anyone challenged his understanding of the world without trying to change him. That night, as the sky darkened once more, Elijah sat on the porch of his house. The land stretched out before him, quiet and open. He thought about how close he had come to letting misunderstanding turn into distance, how easily he could have closed himself off again. Instead, something had opened. Miles away, Nayland shared the story with her grandmother, not as a warning but as a lesson. She spoke of the storm, the horse, the quiet rancher who listened when it mattered. Her grandmother listened carefully, then smiled. Understanding grows in strange places, the elder said, even at the edge of old wounds. Nayland carried those words with her as the days passed. She returned to the ranch as promised, checking on the horse, speaking briefly with Elijah. Each visit built a small bridge of trust. No grand gestures, no dramatic change, just steady, honest presence. The misunderstanding did not define them. What followed did. And though neither of them knew where this path would lead, they both understood one thing clearly now. The night had not tested their intentions, it had tested their ability to listen. That lesson stayed with them, shaping choices yet to come, quietly guiding the next chapter of their lives. Days passed after the storm, and the land slowly returned to its usual rhythm. The ground dried under the sun, and the air grew warmer with each morning. Life on the ranch continued, but for Elijah, something had shifted beneath the surface. The routines were the same, yet they no longer felt empty. Each task carried a quiet sense of purpose, as if the land itself was waiting for something more. The horse grew stronger with each passing day. Its leg healed slowly but steadily. Elijah took care not to rush the process. He spoke to the animal while he worked, his voice low and calm. He did not expect answers. He spoke because it helped him think. Nayland returned as she said she would. At first, her visits were brief. She checked the horse, adjusted the wrapping, and left with a polite nod. They spoke little, but the silence between them felt natural, not tense. Over time, the visits grew longer. A few more words were shared. Small conversations took place, mostly about the land, the weather, and the animal's progress. Elijah noticed how her presence changed the space. The barn felt less like a shelter and more like a shared place of care. He found himself looking forward to the sound of her footsteps, though he did not question why. Nayland, too, felt the change. Each visit showed her something new about the rancher. He listened carefully. He did not interrupt. When he spoke, his words were honest and simple. He did not try to explain himself more than necessary. That kind of quiet truth was rare. Still, the world beyond the ranch was not as calm. Rumors began to move through nearby towns. Some spoke of an Apache woman visiting a rancher alone. Others twisted the story, turning care into suspicion. Fear traveled faster than truth, as it often did. People who had never set foot on the land felt confident speaking about it. Elijah first heard the rumors in town. He had gone to trade supplies and overheard hushed voices. The words were not loud, but they were sharp. He felt anger rise, not hot and sudden, but slow and heavy. He did not respond. He finished his business and left, but the words followed him home, settling into his thoughts like dust. Nayland heard of the rumors too through her community. Some elders were concerned. Others were cautious but curious. A few warned her to keep distance, reminding her of the past and the pain carried by it. She listened to every voice. She respected their concern. But she also trusted her own experience. The next time she visited the ranch, she could sense the tension in Elijah. His movements were tighter, his voice quieter than usual. "People are talking," he said at last. She nodded. "I know. They don't understand," he added. "They rarely do," she replied. For a moment the weight of the situation pressed down on them both. The horse shifted gently, as if reminding them of why they were there. "I don't want to cause trouble for you," Elijah said, "or your people." Nayland met his eyes. "Trouble does not come from care," she said. "It comes from fear." Her words stayed with him long after she left that day. As the horse grew strong enough to stand without discomfort, the question of returning it came closer. The animal belonged with her people. Elijah knew that. Letting go felt harder than he expected. On the day they decided to move the horse, the sky was clear and wide. Nayland arrived with 2 members of her community. They greeted Elijah respectfully. He returned the greeting, standing tall and calm. Together they guided the horse slowly across the land. The animal moved carefully but confidently. Elijah walked alongside for part of the way, then stopped at the edge of his property. "This is as far as I go," he said. Nayland nodded. She stepped closer, her voice soft. "Thank you," she said, "not just for the horse, but for everything unspoken." As she turned to leave, Elijah felt something tighten in his chest. He realized how much he had learned in such a short time, about trust, about listening, about himself. That evening, trouble finally reached the ranch. A small group of men arrived just before sunset. They were not violent, but they were angry. Their words were filled with suspicion and judgment. They accused Elijah of crossing lines, of inviting danger. He stood his ground. He spoke calmly, clearly. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. "I helped an injured animal," he said. "Nothing more." The men did not fully believe him, but they saw something in his stance that made them hesitate. Eventually they left, though not peacefully. That night Elijah sat alone, the quiet heavier than usual. Doubt tried to find a place in his mind. Had he done the right thing? Had he opened a door that should have stayed closed? Far away, Nayland sat with her grandmother by the fire. She shared what had happened. The elder listened, her face thoughtful. "Change always brings noise," her grandmother said, "but silence is not always safety." The next morning, Nayland returned to the ranch alone. Elijah was surprised but relieved to see her. "I heard," she said simply. He nodded. "I don't want this to become something harmful." She considered this. "Then we must be clear," she said, "with ourselves and with others." They spoke openly that day, about boundaries, about respect, about the weight of history and the choice to act differently. It was not an easy conversation, but it was honest. By the end of it, something solid had formed between them, not a promise, but understanding. As weeks passed, the rumors faded. New stories replaced old ones. The horse settled back with its people, fully healed. Life continued. But neither Elijah nor Nayland returned to who they had been before. The land had watched them choose care over fear, and in doing so, it had allowed them to grow. The storm that had first brought them together felt distant now, but its lesson remained. Understanding did not erase the past, but it offered a way forward. And though the path ahead was uncertain, they both stepped onto it with steady hearts, ready for whatever came next. Time has a way of smoothing sharp edges. Weeks turned into months and the season slowly shifted. The heat softened, and the wind carried a cooler breath across the land. The ranch stood as it always had, quiet and steady, But Elijah felt the difference in the way he moved through his days. He was no longer simply passing time. He was living within it. The morning still began early. He rose before the sun, brewed his coffee, and stepped outside to greet the land. But now, when he looked across the wide fields, he did not feel as alone as before. The silence had changed. It was no longer a wall. It was space, open and calm. The barn felt different too. The place where the storm had once trapped fear and misunderstanding now held something gentler. Elijah often paused there, even when no work needed doing. He remembered the quiet strength of that night, the care they had shared, and the lesson it had offered him. He had learned that listening was not weakness, and that stepping back could be as important as stepping forward. Nayland continued her life among her people, grounded in daily responsibilities and tradition. She helped elders, gathered plants, and guided younger ones with patience. She carried herself with the same calm confidence as always, but those closest to her noticed a new depth in her gaze. She had seen something rare, a moment where fear did not win. She did not visit the ranch as often as before. Not because trust had faded, but because the need had passed. The horse was healthy and strong, moving freely once again across familiar land. Its recovery felt complete, like a circle closed. Still, when Nayland and Elijah crossed paths, sometimes by chance near the river or along a shared trail, their greetings were warm and respectful. They spoke easily without tension. Sometimes they shared a few words, sometimes only a nod. Both were enough. The rumors that once stirred trouble lost their power. New concerns replaced old ones as they always did. Some people never changed their views, but many began to soften. They saw that no harm had come from kindness, that the world had not broken because two people chose care over fear. One afternoon, a gathering was held near the edge of the Apache land. It was a simple event, meant to mark the change of season. Music drifted across the open space, carried by the wind. Children laughed. Elders spoke quietly among themselves. Elijah had not planned to attend. He stood at a distance at first, unsure if his presence would be welcome, but Nayland noticed him. She approached calmly without calling attention to him. "You can stay," she said simply. He nodded and took a seat near the edge, careful not to intrude. No one turned him away. No one stared. He was simply there. As the sun lowered, stories were shared. Not dramatic tales, but simple ones, about the land, about resilience, about learning when to hold on and when to let go. Elijah listened closely. He did not interrupt. He did not explain himself. He just listened. In that moment, he understood something clearly. This was what he had missed all those years, not noise or company, but connection built on respect. Later, as the gathering ended, Nayland walked with him for a short distance. "That night," she said quietly, "it taught us both." He nodded. "It taught me more than I expected." She smiled slightly. Not wide, not showy, just enough to show understanding. As the year moved forward, Elijah found himself making small changes. He fixed fences that marked shared paths, making them easier to pass. He left water out during the driest weeks, knowing others might need it. These were not grand gestures. They were quiet ones done without announcement. Nayland noticed. Others did too. One evening, Elijah stood on his porch as the sun disappeared behind the hills. The sky burned orange and gold before fading into blue. He thought about the man he had been, closed, guarded, convinced that distance meant safety. He was still cautious, still quiet, but he was no longer afraid of understanding. Far away, Nayland sat with her grandmother once more. The elder's hair had grown thinner, her movements slower, but her eyes remained sharp. "You chose wisely," her grandmother said, "not because the path was easy, but because you listened." Nayland nodded. So did he. The elder smiled. That is how change begins. Years later, people would speak of that storm only in passing. Some remembered the rain, others remembered the horse. Few remembered the misunderstanding itself, but many remembered what followed. They remembered a rancher who learned to open his world without losing himself. They remembered a young woman who spoke with clarity and calm when it mattered most. They remembered that sometimes a single moment, quiet and uncertain, could shift the direction of many lives. Elijah continued to live on the land until old age. When asked about the most important lesson of his life, he did not speak of hardship or loss. He spoke of listening, of a night when words almost failed but understanding did not. Nayland became a guide for her people, known for her wisdom and steady presence. She taught others that strength did not come from shouting, but from choosing the right moment to speak and the courage to clarify when needed. The land remained. The wind still moved through the grass. The mountains still watched from a distance. And the night that once threatened to divide two worlds became a quiet reminder that misunderstanding, when met with honesty, could become the beginning of something lasting. Not romance. Not legend, but growth. And sometimes that is the most powerful change of all.